So I think we're all in agreement here that Sony's doing very well with PS4 and they're selling a lot of consoles. And if you kind of look at the Xbox One side of things, they tripped over themselves in 2013. They never truly recovered from that. And yeah, they're still doing very well with Xbox and selling a lot of consoles. It's just that in comparison, they're not doing nearly as well as Sony. Well, I think a lot of gamers right now are sleeping on Microsoft, and here's why Sony should probably watch the company very closely as we go into 2019 and the next generation. So that's what we're going to cover in this video. And I'm sure many of you may be watching this and looking at the title of the video and thinking, what? And you're drinking the Sony Kool-Aid thinking, who can stop Sony going into 2019? They've got all this momentum. So many PS4 consoles are out there. Sony's got those worldwide first-party studios, right? You got Naughty Dog, Sony Santa Monica, Guerrilla Games, Media Molecule, Sony Bend, Polyphony Digital. All these great developers that are making games that are only going to be available on PlayStation. You've got all these good IP as well that are probably going to see major sequels on PlayStation 5, and that will certainly bolster the desire to buy into that platform. And sure, it's crazy to sort of talk about it this early, but if you look at the timeline of what Microsoft's been doing, especially in 2018, you can see where the company's really moving forward, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. And so to actually focus on that one first part, the timeline, look at Microsoft's timeline so far. Now, I truly believe that this kind of started around the end life cycle of Xbox 360, where Microsoft was selling a lot of Kinect sensors for 360. And, it's understandable that they kind of doubled down on that because Kinect was selling very, very well. So, of course, they were focusing on Kinect-enabled games and family-oriented games, but that's what kind of soured a lot of gamers as the PS3 was seeing a lot of first-party releases and many exclusives almost at a bi-weekly basis near the end of the PS3's life cycle, which made it an even easier decision once we saw what Xbox One was compared to PS4. Many gamers then bandwagoned down to PlayStation 4. We all know that story, right? But you can see that the whole Xbox One generation is Microsoft doing a 180 on all of their bad decisions. And Xbox had Phil Spencer really kind of being at the forefront of changing and making all those major decisions to make the brand so much more better and more desirable. But the big takeaway is that Microsoft has actually been pretty forward and somewhat open about the fact that they are not going to catch Sony. They've actually gone on record to say this a few times in the sense of, and it's not always a direct way of saying, oh, we just give up or we're not going to beat PS4. They don't say it like that. It's very much so PR speak, but they essentially say they're just trying to focus on their own customers and they're not as concerned with numbers anymore and just producing quality content. That's them more or less saying, we're not going to catch Sony this console generation.
That was the thing that motivated me, that chart right there. Because I'm new to head of Xbox. Previous to that, I had run game studios and was all about shipping games and gaining customers. And I started off making some statements like we want to win and kind of turning it into a competitive thing. But what I quickly realized is you can only control as a leader the things that you can control. The products that you build, the features that you add to your platform, the way you talk about yourselves and your team and the products that you build. And basing your success on an external view of your share of what Sony's doing. Sony's having incredible success with PlayStation 4, and they've earned that.
But look at those moves. They're preparing themselves for what's on the horizon. And they've already discussed next generation platforms, saying that there's going to be multiple Xbox hardware and there's going to be a streaming service. But let's really focus on what I had mentioned in the very beginning of the video, which is Sony's first-party studios. That's one of the major contributing factors of why Sony does so well on PlayStation 4. Something like God of War, which came out earlier this year, something like Horizon Zero Dawn, something like Uncharted 4, Last of Us Part 2 coming up. These are part of Sony's worldwide studios. These games are big and they're very well received and they convince people to buy PlayStation 4s. And this is a big thing of why Xbox sometimes doesn't see nearly as much demand when you don't see these kind of major releases on the platform. You see more Halo, more Gears of War, and there's other games that Xbox One has received as well, but they just don't have that impact that Sony's been receiving on the PlayStation 4 end. But look at Microsoft Game Studios. This year alone, they've added 7 new studios to their lineup, effectively doubling Microsoft Game Studios. Now, if we're keeping count here, Microsoft has 13 studios now compared to Sony's 14 studios. That's right, we've always known that Sony's had the most studios, and sure, technically they still do, but it's looking like a very level playing field. And we'll actually get into the minutia of that in a second, because I think the better context of this video is to really go over Microsoft's current lineup of game studios. With that being said, let's dive into it real quick and understand what Microsoft now has under their belt, which is 343 Industries. That, of course, is the developer that produces the Halo content, the Halo series. So we're going to be seeing more Halo from them. That's no different. Microsoft Casual Game Studios. So this, you can really sort of discredit this one. This developer often does a lot of solitaire, card games, stuff like that for Windows and whatnot, so not really a huge deal. Turn 10 Studios, that is for Forza Motorsport. The Forza series is very big on Xbox, and we're going to see more Forza out of them. Mojang is another one where it's like, all right, well, this is actually a developer that will release Minecraft content on multiple platforms, because it's Microsoft's best interest to make Minecraft multi-platform, because it sells so phenomenally well that Microsoft would make more money selling the game everywhere else instead of just keeping it exclusive and trying to encourage Xbox One hardware. It makes more sense to say multi-platform with that. But Mojang has done more smaller scale projects, and those games are the ones that are exclusive to Microsoft's consoles. Then there's Rare, and they recently released Sea of Thieves. Unfortunately, Rare was subjected to a lot of very crappy projects in the past, but now Microsoft has put them onto something a little bit more different, a little more creative, and let's face it, Sea of Thieves is a lot more exciting than a Kinect-based game. And then there's the Coalition, which is Gears of War. And surely the Coalition will probably be doing more Gears of War in the future, and possibly maybe another IP at some point down the road. But the exciting conversation is the new studios, because this is where you can really tell that Microsoft for the past few years now, because these deals do take a long time to finalize, and Microsoft has certainly been scouting for these acquirement of these developers. So this has been years in the making of them prepping for their next generation hardware. They recently purchased Inxile Entertainment. Now this developer is a bit smaller scale. You know, they made The Bard's Tale. They're currently working on Wasteland 3, and these games actually are still going to be released on PlayStation 4. That's how much of a recent acquirement the studio is. But you can see that once they're wrapped up with these projects, you got to figure Microsoft saw something in this studio that maybe it was an unannounced project, very early in the making. This is where Microsoft Onward could have exclusivity with this developer, and perhaps we will see something very interesting out of them. Then you have Undead Labs, which did State of Decay, and that partnership has always been there with Undead Labs. We've got State of Decay 2 now. I mean, that one was kind of a no-brainer, but State of Decay is a great game, and moving forward, Undead Labs is now going to have much more of a spending limit and budget to work on perhaps an even bigger and better game. Then you have Playground Games. They are doing Forza Horizon, and they also have a new project involving open world in some way, shape, or form. Now, Xbox head Phil Spencer didn't really get into details about this, but he more or less said, on top of doing Forza Horizon, which are fantastic open world racing games, you are now going to see the studio take their expertise to possibly an entirely different genre, and that's very exciting. Then you've got Ninja Theory. Now, Ninja Theory, as a PlayStation fan, you might remember from the PS3 exclusive Heavenly Sword. Recently, they did Hellblade, and, you know, these are also good games. Heavenly Sword was seen as somewhat of a good to great game, not necessarily fantastic, but Hellblade was fantastic. And we are definitely going to see them working on something very big and very interesting. Now, what's interesting about Ninja Theory is that they actually have been open and saying that they wanted to go with Microsoft because they enjoy doing riskier projects, and Microsoft is going to give them the creative freedom to try something a little different that's maybe more of a smaller scale project, but certainly a game that would be very enticing. And Microsoft even admitted they like Ninja Theory because they think their games would be a great fit for Xbox Game Pass. Then there's Compulsion Games. Now, they've recently released We Happy Few. Some people don't like We Happy Few, and certainly it's not without its problems and its errors, but you can see how We Happy Few was a different kind of game, and it was the kind of game that is approached in a different manner. And I think that's what Microsoft liked about that studio. They want to see something a little bit different. They're really trying to broaden their reach in terms of their games. They don't want to be pegged anymore as this, you know, console manufacturer that just has Halo, Gears, and Forza. They want to have something different. Compulsion Games is a great addition. Then you've got The Initiative. This is a brand new studio in Santa Monica, headed by Daryl Gallagher. And this guy is formerly of Activision, Square Enix. He oversaw the development of many Tomb Raider titles over at Crystal Dynamics. This guy has more than 20 years in the games industry. And what some people don't understand is where the actual development studio is based. This is very important. Santa Monica is a hotbed for developers. There's a lot of great talent in the immediate area, including Naughty Dog. And so they're getting a lot of great industry talent, and they're fielding and getting some of these people from other studios into this project of whatever the hell they're working on. But I would have to make the assumption here that whatever the initiative is doing, it's probably a fairly large title, a fairly ambitious title, and you can certainly expect it to be on the next Xbox, headlining as a major exclusive game. And then there's Obsidian Entertainment, which is an interesting one because right now Obsidian just recently revealed their new game, The Outer Worlds, which is sort of a sci-fi Fallout. They revealed this at the Game Awards, and what's interesting about Obsidian's The Outer Worlds is that this game actually is multi-platform. It's on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. Now, here's why that game is still coming to PS4, despite the fact that Microsoft recently acquired the studio. That specific title, The Outer Worlds, that game is being actually published with Private Division, which is a subsidiary of Take-Two Games. And so technically, as it stands right now, with that particular title being released, it was a kind of situation where, obviously, because the game was not made in a year, The Outer Worlds is being made, it's been made for many years now. And so this deal was probably wrapped up a long time ago, more or less, and the acquirement of Obsidian was obviously after this deal had already gone down, which means that the game is committed to releasing on multiple platforms. Because if you look at the trailer, it's a sci-fi Fallout. I mean, if this game's good, it's probably going to be very good, and this would be a huge get for Microsoft, because what you have to understand is that this IP is now going to be Microsoft's after the fact of this first game getting released. This game is not owned anymore by Obsidian. Obsidian's not independent. They are owned by Microsoft. So after this one specific contract and deal is carried out, with this first game being released on multiple platforms, you bet your bottom dollar if there's a sequel to The Outer Worlds, it will be exclusive to the next Xbox. And that will be a very big deal. That's a big one, right? I mean, this is a Fallout-esque title that's going to be, something that's going to be loved and revered by many people. Again, assuming it's good. Certainly it could come out and it could be a dud just like Fallout 76. But, looking at the talent that's in the studio, looking at how different of a game it is, but still kind of familiar in the sense of open world. I mean, even just looking at it, you can tell these are the same guys from Fallout. So yeah, I mean, if it's a great game, it's going to be a huge deal for Microsoft moving forward, because they are certainly going to lock up the exclusivity on the second one once that deal is under Microsoft. So yes, Sony does have 14 developers, which is more than Microsoft, and I know many of you are probably already trying to discredit some of Microsoft's studios, and sure, you could certainly write off a few of them, like the Casual Game Studio, because they're not even making Xbox One games, more or less. You might want to discredit Mojang because they're mostly doing Minecraft, or Inxile Entertainment because they're weird, quirky little PC games that don't often review all that well. But for just as many games that you can discredit off of Microsoft's developers, you can actually do the same for Sony. I mean, Pixel Opus does weird, artistically approached games that might not be for everybody. You've got Manchester Studio that's only VR stuff, so if you're not into VR content whatsoever, that's already a developer you can cross off Sony's list. You've got ForwardWorks on Sony's list. ForwardWorks only does mobile games. It's not even really a Sony developer in the sense of releasing PlayStation 4 games. San Diego Studio, they pretty much only do MLB. Yearly MLB The Show. They sometimes dabble in other projects and the like that, but you've never seen like a major AAA, incredible new IP come out of San Diego Studio. You just haven't. So it's really kind of getting to a point now where within a year, at least, of announcements, because again, Microsoft has spent years making this sort of happen, which is why I think most of Xbox One's lifetime has kind of been a sense of like, okay, there's a team focusing on just keeping the platform going and keeping fans excited and engaged, but there's a whole other separate part of Microsoft that's really gearing up for the next generation in a very significant way. So it's really getting to a point now where for just as many compelling titles as you'll see on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 moving forward, I think you're honestly going to see the same amount of titles on the next generation Xbox. That's what Microsoft's preparing, and if those 7 acquirements of new studios in 2018 did not prove that to you, I don't know what will. And that's not me saying Sony's gonna lose or they're doomed or anything like that. We can't really have any of those conversations until these machines actually get revealed and we start seeing titles for them. But what I am saying is Sony as a company shouldn't be discrediting Microsoft, and certainly many gamers and consumers shouldn't be as well. They are really, really committing. That's a lot of studios they recently acquired. It's a lot of great talent. And this is just in the same veins of all these studios that Sony has acquired over the years. And so I think that maybe Sony's in a spot right now where maybe they should understand and recommit to the fact that it's very important to have those first-party studios, and maybe look at eyeing up 1 or 2 new studios for acquirement. They haven't acquired a studio in a few years now, and they've actually recently closed a few. I think it is to a point where maybe Sony should consider maybe grabbing another 1 or 2, you know? I'm just saying. But it's going to be, God, if it didn't look interesting before, it's really interesting now, and I can't wait to see these machines in 2019 when they will presumably be revealed. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sure this is going to encourage a lot of healthy, great discussion in the comments. I say that sarcastically. But if you haven't yet, subscribe for the best PlayStation news, reviews, and updates here on YouTube, and just general video game discussion like this topic right here. And that's pretty much it. I'll see you all in my next video, and you take it easy.